Warning. Tongue and Geek contains heavy spoilers. If you haven't read, watched, or played the content being reviewed this episode, know that we will definitely spoil major plot points. Also, this show isn't for kids. We use words like and and it would take too much time and effort to edit them all out. Please don't tell our moms. Hello, lovely listeners, and welcome to Tongue and Geek, where two more white folks on the internet give their unsolicited opinions on all things geeky. I'm Isaac, and unfortunately, the Grim Reaper has enlisted my co-host Tyler to fight in the Skeleton War. So, in his absence, I'm joined by his wife and my dear friend Erika. Say hi, Erika.
Hello.
Fantastic. Today we're reviewing Volume 1, aka Issues 1 through 8 of Death Vigil, an action comedy horror comic first published in 2014, created by, and I apologize so much for this pronunciation, I do not know how it is, Stjepan Šejić? Erika says it, the last name is Šejić. Is that right?
Yes, we did try really hard to research this because the creator is Croatian.
Yeah.
And we tried finding people who would pronounce it for us online. Unfortunately, there are only androids doing it, but the creator himself said that if you say sage, especially if you can say it with like a little bit of an accent, then that's the closest you could get. We tried. Please forgive us.
His wife's name is Linda, so
yeah.
It's the first name that's harder for me. So we're just going to call him Šejić. This was created for Top Cow Productions, which is an imprint of Image Comics. Erika, do you have any background for us on this one?
I do. I have personal background, I guess.
Excellente.
We talked about this a little bit in our Harley Quinn podcast, but there is a really great comic called Harleen, and I think that was my first introduction to this author/artist, and so I was reading it, I was really enjoying it, eventually shared it with my friend Shadow, who was co-hosting with us on that episode, and I have a friend who lives a couple hours away from me who is also got a lot of the same interests that I do as far as reading, and I told her that I was reading Harleen, and she said, oh gosh, if you liked Harleen, you should check out Death Vigil. It's really my favorite. And I was like, okay. I'm not hugely a comic or graphic novel person. I don't know why. I love looking at the pictures, and I'm a huge book nerd, and somehow those two things don't really translate well together. I have I have a hard time really staying invested in a comic sometimes. I think it's because I have to, I don't know, growing up as a book reader, I think it's like you're used to picturing it in your head. So when I'm trying to look and read, I don't know, somehow it makes me very slow, and it isn't always a really happy,
It's a different pacing for sure, and a different way of taking it in.
And the pacing about Death Vigil is actually something that I think we'll talk about, because it's one of the things that a lot of reviewers have talked about for Death Vigil, interestingly enough. But she told me to check out Death Vigil. I got Volume 1, which, like you said, is issues 1 through 8, the only issues currently.
Yes,
and I just loved it. I read it so quickly. I had such a fun time, and I immediately was like, I know someone in my life who needs to read this. And so I said, Isaac, you gotta check this out. It just screams Isaac.
Yeah, I think this was a birthday present one year you got for me.
Yeah, it was.
A couple years ago.
Yeah.
It was a good one. A little more general background. Šejić, I'm assuming Šejić. Like we said, Croatian comic writer and artist, known for his work on the series Witchblade, Aphrodite 9, and a web series called Sunstone, very saucy series called Sunstone that started on like DeviantArt. This series in particular, Death Vigil, there's not too much to say about it. It had an initial 8-issue run back in 2014 through 2015. It was critically acclaimed, but it faced poor sales. Then Šejić had some health issues, some other things in his personal life that kind of put this series on indefinite hold for a while. He turned to crowdfunding for a while to see if he could get this series crowdfunded. The first chapter of Volume 2 was actually released on Patreon to his patrons only back in December of 2019. But in 2020, Šejić announced his departure from mainstream comic book industry to focus on his own creator-owned works. So I don't really know if there is a future for this series. This might be all that we really get.
Right. It's surprising to me, too, to learn that it was really, like you said, critically acclaimed, and fans love it. It's got a ton of fans, but that it really didn't make as much money as they wanted. And some of his other comics as well weren't really generating enough cash flow, I guess. The way that Death Vigil Volume 1 ends, it does leave it open for there to be more. But, I mean, it's not 100% necessary. The last I had also seen, he posted on Instagram, I think it was maybe last year, he had said it's probably going to be coming in the first half of 2022, that there would still be a Volume 2. But we are here in July, end of July of 2022, and the first half is gone, and we have yet to have it. So I too am not sure if that's actually something that's going to happen.
It's looking more and more like Volume 2 might be a pipe dream, which is sad, but what we got's good.
It's hard to say, though, because Saga, which is something else we'll talk about on the pod, that for the longest time was postponed.
That's true.
And they also had a moving goalpost where they kept saying, we're coming back, and they actually did. So who knows? But what we do have is really nice. It's pretty complete. You know, you can call this a conclusion.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of a grab at the end that opens it up for more if you want it.
Yeah, it's a nice little self-contained story with an opening, like an ending that's open enough that we can definitely do more with this world and these characters. But if not, we're good.
Yeah.
Where should we start with this series?
Ooh, that's a good question. Do we start with characters? Do we start with the first issue?
Let's start with the general premise, I think. So,
okay.
Which is sort of also talking about the first issue. So Death Vigil follows the Grim Reaper, aka Bernie or Bernadette, who is an amnesiac who has this magical scythe. She will come to people as they're dying and recruit them into the Death Vigil, which is a group of people who have almost died and are given magical weapons called Veil Rippers that allows them to fight the forces of evil, specifically necromancers, who are bringing forth demons from across the veil. It's not really that complicated, to be honest. Like, it sounds more complicated when you say it out loud, but it's really just sort of a generic good guys versus bad guys, good magic versus bad magic.
It's a very simple story because it's literally just a very straightforward good versus evil in the most blatant of ways.
Yeah, the Death Vigil are the good guys. They're working with Bernadette, the Grim Reaper, and the bad guys are necromancers who are summoning demons and trying to take over the world. Not too complicated. The story basically breaks down into three major tropes, which is like new recruit learning the ropes, found family, and for the antagonist, tragic figure trying to bring back a dead loved one, which I guess, spoiler. But But yeah, we start off with our main character, Sam, who is one of the Death Vigil. He comes across a necromancer in issue 1, and this necromancer has killed his girlfriend in a ritual meant to bring back his father and summon demons from across the veil. The demons are just called the Enemy, by the way. I don't think they have a specific title for them besides that. I mean, like, individual ones are called like Banshees and Lich and things like that, but I don't think besides the Enemy they're given a title. They're basically any eldritch horror you can think of.
I think they maybe call them the Abominations later as a general term, but yeah, they're just mostly called the Enemy, especially in the beginning.
But yeah, Sam is fighting this necromancer when he and Bernie defeat it, and when they do, they realize that they can bring this girl that was killed back to life and have her join the Death Vigil. So Sam and this new girl who's called Clara, they're sort of our main characters. Clara is learning more about the Vigil. She's sort of the eyes that we, the audience, see through as we learn more and more about this group of, supernatural fighters. It really is just like a new recruit in like a fantasy sort of world thing. And it is very basic, but at the same time, there's so much flair to it because the way that Šejić writes and draws this series, it's doing this really interesting balancing act between comedy, horror, and action. Šejić's skill, I think, is especially prominent in his art over his writing. The art is just, let's just get into the art style. It's very, very detailed.
Oh, it's perfect.
Like,
yeah.
I've noticed also that the human characters are like a different two-dimensional style, while the backgrounds are, I think, digitally rendered, as well as some of the monsters themselves are digitally rendered. And while that sounds like it'd be jarring, they mesh really well. And there's just so much detail in every panel. Like, the characters are so emotionally expressive with their faces. The monsters are just like big masses of tentacles and claws and teeth and skulls, and yet you don't ever get lost in it.
Yeah.
They're grotesque and terrifying looking, and, you know, they're exactly what you'd think when you think of like an eldritch abomination, but at the same time, I don't know, this is where the comics definitely has some trouble. It is an action horror, which both are very well, but it's also a comedy. And I think that comedy, for the most part, is charming, if not outright funny, but it can come off as a bit try-hard, and it can undercut some of the horror elements of this series, which I can't believe I am saying the comedy is undercutting the horror.
Well, I think it's because it's such extreme horror. There's a lot of gore, and it's really cosmic horror. Like, it's horror on a big, big scale. So there are times where it's maybe like, ooh, that's a little glib, and that kind of undercuts like all this that's happened. But one of the things, since we're talking about the art, I have read comics before that are beautiful, that they're beautiful to look at, and they have good stories, like the fantasy comic series Monstrous. Also very, very beautiful, also quite a lot of horror. People compare it to George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones a lot. It's very bloody, but compared to Death Vigil, I mean, Death Vigil, it's like, it's not only just that it's beautiful, it's like his talent just shines through so well, because like you said, the faces are so expressive. He conveys a lot of movement really well. Whether it's like, there are some slow-mo scenes, there are some scenes that are really fast because we're fighting, and all of it just flows beautifully.
Yeah, without a lot of actual classic sort of comic effects. Like, a lot of the times the monsters themselves will have like energy crackling off them, or the necromancers and the weapons will. But like, there's never any like, I don't think there's any really instances of like rushing wind to indicate, you know, like speed or anything. It's all just in the way that the characters and the monsters like bodies are posed. And it still like conveys a great deal of motion. It's hard for me to really describe how well the art in this works. It's so good. Like, Šejić, say what you will about his writing, Šejić is a master artist.
Yeah. All of the reviews that I've read from, you know, back when I read this originally, and from us kind of refreshing our memory, nobody really can complain about the art. There's very few people who are not just like, I'm blown away by the art. Whatever I think about storytelling abilities, like the art, it can't really fail to impress. It's just amazing. Yeah. Like, it really is at its heart so many things, because it's action adventure, and it's horror supernatural, and it's also, like you said, found family. So there's really a lot going on for him to juggle.
For a little 8-issue miniseries too, yeah. Like I said, probably its weakest element is its comedy, and I don't think it's that the comedy itself is ever actually bad. I think it's just that it's so prevalent throughout the whole series. Like, characters are constantly cracking jokes. And they address this, and they acknowledge that this is like a way that they cope with, you know, the fact that they're fighting unspeakable abominations and demons and stuff, and they're constantly, you know, having friends and family die facing against these things. But it still comes off as a little too glib at moments. It's like, we can have a sad scene here, just kind of, you know, let us sit in it. Or we can have a scary scene here, just kind of, you know, let us sit in it.
I think going from, some of the scenes are so wholesome and like happy and lighthearted, and then some of the scenes are so like haunting and like scary and like dark or sad. So sometimes there's like some bleed over. Yeah. And there's some like one-liners or things where you're like, could have done without that. I feel like especially Sam.
Yeah.
He's one of our main characters. Yeah. Sam and his shovel.
Sam's really always cracking wise.
Yeah.
Let's just get into the main character. So we've got Sam, who's sort of our narrator protagonist. He's been with the Death Vigil for 12 years now. The series actually starts with, I think, his death, and we see Bernadette recruiting him. He is just this big himbo who is doing his best to fight against monsters. He's got his Veil Rippers. Every Veil Ripper takes a different form. For him, it takes the form of a shovel and a pickaxe. And every Veil Ripper also has its own special power. This is something that confused me when I first started reading this, because we see Sam in issue 1 use his Veil Ripper to summon a horde of Vikings, Draugr, like zombie Vikings, to help him fight. And I thought that was his power. But then later on in the series, they make a big deal of, like, Sam doesn't know what his Veil Ripper's power is. Which seems sort of, like, counterproductive to me. There's a little, like, throwaway line where he says, like, I just had these Draugr swear a blood oath to me. And it's like, what? Like, why not just make this his power? If we're gonna do, like, a whole big deal of, like, he can, summon a horde of zombie Vikings, like, why is that not just his special ability?
Yeah. I don't know. I think also we're getting this, though, not even through the lens of Sam. We're being told this story, but we're being told it as one of the other characters, Clara.
Yeah, it does switch back and forth between their voices. They both get some narration bubbles. Yeah.
So maybe he specifically... I don't know how to articulate what I'm trying to say, but yeah, I remember that part.
Yeah. Sam's... Like I said, he's fun. He's a fun sort of himbo character. He and Bernie are a thing. They're an item. But there's not too much to say about him. He's just sort of a nice guy, big brother to Clara as she's learning the ropes. He's a good support for Bernie. He's just a good dude. He doesn't have a really terribly complex arc that he goes through here.
And they show us, like, literally, like Isaac said, from his first scene, what a good guy he is, because he literally dies because he's trying to save people who were being mugged and has the option to run or to leave or to ignore it, but instead decides to confront them. Yeah, from the very beginning. Yeah.
It was Halloween night. He was dressed as a cop, and he saw a mugging, and he tried to use a fake gun to stop it. So, great character introduction, great setup of just sort of the selfless guy he is. But there's not too much to say about it. He's not complicated, he's not complex, but he is just, like, he's nice, and he's nice to have here in the group. Sometimes you don't need a terribly complex character that you can relate to. Sometimes he just has to be a cool dude, and that's Sam. He's just a sweet, cool dude.
He's just like the big guy who hits things. Yeah. And he's like, the thing about, everybody in this comic is really attractive.
They are. They are.
Unless we're talking about, like, the Abyss or something, like some of the evil, crazy monsters. Like, from whatever perspective you look at it, like, even the Grim Reaper is hot.
Yeah.
So everybody's really attractive. Like, Sam's really attractive. He's, like, super muscular. Everybody has, like, platinum blonde hair, pale skin. He's got, like, these huge muscles and, like, a muscle shirt to show them off. Then he's, like, carrying around his big Veil Ripper. It's very fun. I feel like his introduction that we get for him, and then the introduction of the first time that we see Clara, which is when she is killed by her boyfriend, the necromancer, they both get such strong, cool intros where you're just like, oh, damn, look at that.
Yeah.
And then I think it's part of what hooked me.
Yeah. Definitely Sam, we get an immediate idea of, like, who he is as a character. I'm just going to go ahead. I guess we'll jump ahead with, is it horny? I don't know how horny this series itself is, but I've seen some of Sheiji's other work. Almost everything Šejić makes is horny. There's some real horny in it. Witchblade was horny. Bloodstone is definitely horny. Like, lots of horny in Šejić's work. Good, though. Good stuff. I guess we can kind of just move on to Clara then, huh?
Yeah.
So Clara's the new recruit. She starts off, she gets killed, there's that big fight, and then she gets recruited afterwards. Clara is a bit complicated to talk about because a lot of what we get that's interesting about her seems to be build up for a future story that we don't quite get in this one. We get like constant references to she had a bad home life with her family, but we don't really get to see what her family life was like. We don't get an actual flashback. We just get references to it. We also get glimpses that she's not entirely human herself.
Yeah.
That she has actually been connected to some sort of necromantic power, to some kind of demon, and that she has abilities that go even beyond the Death Vigil that they haven't recognized yet. But it never really comes to a head. We get some stuff where they maybe are starting to realize, like, hey, she's not normal, but by the end of the story, it's still not entirely clear on what she is or, like, what her connection to the necromancers and the enemy are.
They tease it for us quite a lot.
A lot of teasing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like fan theories and reviews and discussion boards and things because her boyfriend was trying to bind a primordial to her, and after it's such a great scene because I love Clara. Like, she's like, I'm just going to your father's grave with you, boyfriend. I'm such a good girlfriend. Oh, it looks like someone has drawn weird ruins all over the floor. And he's like, oh, that was me. And she's like, huh, that's a weird thing to do. And he's like, well, not if I'm going to sacrifice you right here in cold blood. So I think it's really strongly hinted that what he was trying to do was successful. And one of the things that's very subtle and fun in the comics is that after that ritual, which we're supposed to think went wrong, her eyes glow red. Yeah. And this doesn't happen to anybody else. And there's also some other hints that really kind of like say like, okay, maybe she actually is possessed, but that's not really something we get a payoff about. If maybe we get volume 2, maybe.
Lots of build up for a future story with Clara that might never come to fruition. Hopefully, who knows? I will say, probably need to explain what a primordial is. The primordials are like the big giga demons. Like, all of the lesser ones are like banshees and liches and things like that. They're big and bad and terrible, but the primordials are basically like evil gods. And we see 2 of them in this. No, we see 3 of them in this. We see the Abyss, which is like the head of the necromancers. We get Mia, who we'll talk about later. And then we get, at the very end, we get Thorn. So it's kind of hinting that Clara is also a primordial, or that she's connected to a primordial or something at this point. But again, there's a lot of just speculation around her. Clara's really, with this whole trope of like new recruit learning the ropes, it can get really tropey. And I think this whole story is kind of just founded on tropes, but it does them so sincerely and with such like charm and just general fun. Like, it totally embraces that, like, yeah, we're just telling this simple good versus evil story with a new recruit joining a superhero team, found family, yada, yada, yada. And she just, like, goes head first into this whole found family. Like, she mentions, like, I had a bad home life, so you all just adopted me out of nowhere. And I'm like, cool, I finally got somebody who loves me. And she just totally, like, becomes a part of the family within, like, a week. She's, like, totally cool with everything. She's like, yeah, we're fighting demons and stuff now? All right, cool. Oh, I've got a magic feather that I can make portals with? All right, cool. I'm just, like, she picks up so quickly on everything, just being like, yeah, this shit's weird, but, like, I had nothing better going on in my life. Might as well go fight demons.
Yeah, she's immediately just like, well, I'm gonna assimilate into your little family and this whole damn thing, and I'm gonna be psyched about it.
She's so great. She's just a fun go-getter. She wants to get out there. She wants to learn everything she can about this Death Vigil. She's real quick to cling on to them emotionally. There's a lot of this story that's not complex or complicated, and when you try and talk about it, it almost seems like too basic. But it's hard to convey in words what's charming about this series, aside from the art itself. The art's phenomenal, beautiful, fantastic. There's just this, even with the comedy that can feel a bit try-hard, there's just this overarching sense of sincere fun to all this. Like, yeah, it's sort of a generic good versus evil story. Yeah, we're relying on a bunch of tropes. But, like, who cares? They're fun tropes. It's a fun good versus evil story. And it's done with some really interesting, fun action. It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that.
Yeah. And it's one of those things you have to, like, experience it yourself to see the beautiful art, to feel the emotions and the vibe of it. It's just so fun.
Yeah. Let's talk about Bernie, I guess.
Love Bernie.
Bernie's great. Hot goth Grim Reaper girl.
Mm-hmm.
She's a total dork, which is awesome. Like, Sam makes a bunch of jokes and cracks wise and everything, but Bernie is just making terrible puns the whole time, and she's like thousands of years old. She's an amnesiac who doesn't remember she doesn't even remember where she got the scythe or why she's the Grim Reaper.
Mm-hmm.
But she's just totally vibing. She's like, man, I've got myself this nice little family of people that I've recruited from the dead, and we hunt down monsters and stuff. And it's just so cool. Life's so good. But then she's also got a very sort of motherly attitude too towards the rest of the Death Vigil. She's like, she feels it when one of them gets hurt or killed. She is devastated if any of them die. She's just a very wholesome take on the Grim Reaper, and she's not even really the Grim Reaper. She doesn't kill people. If anything, this series has misnamed necromancers, because the necromancers don't really bring back the dead, they summon demons, and Bernie is a necromancer because she does bring back the dead.
Yeah. And, like, her main job is really to protect people and protect souls. It's like the opposite of reaping.
Yes. Because these monsters that the necromancer summoned, they're not just, like, bloodthirsty. They actually, just looking at them drives people insane.
Mm-hmm.
They're literally like eldritch monsters where they can't even exist in our world without causing damage. There's not really any ambiguity as to, like, which side is good and which side is evil. It's very clearly, like, necromancer's bad, Death Vigil good.
Yep. And it's cool because, like, everybody, if you are part of the fandom or if you read reviews, they joke about her being like the hot goth girl. And I mean, she is. I love her art. To me, this is the way that no one's really going to care about this, but the way that Bernie looks to me is how I always pictured Narcissa Malfoy, like, just from the Harry Potter series, just like really pale.
It all comes back to Harry Potter.
It always does. Like, she's just got this long, very pale hair, very beautiful. Like, and what's cool about her though is even though she's the Grim Reaper and it's like, ooh, goth or whatever, she's not wearing any black. Like, her color scheme is all, like, purple and white. And, even
it's like a blackish purple, yeah.
Like, even her scythe and her hood, they aren't black. It's purple. And I feel like it's, I don't know, just another play on the fact that she's not, like, reaping souls. And, she's just so cool. She's, like, really funny. She wears her hood up, like, when shit goes down. Like, when she's being, the big boss and when she's having to fight. But, like, when she's just doing, like, the stuff with, like we said, found family, she's just, like, hanging out with them and her hood is down and she loves and cares about everyone. And it's just this, like, ancient being. And it's just so cute.
She gets caught, like, at one point dancing with an iPod in, and it's just so funny.
Yeah.
It's so cute and funny. There's just a lot of cute moments in this horror series where, like, these characters are just hanging out with each other, chilling, talking.
Yeah.
Just hanging out like a family. It really sells the family. As brief as this story is and as quick as it jumps into, like, the Death Vigil's a family, like, they really do sell a good job on the relationships between these characters feeling like a found family.
And they don't force it, because I think we all have read things or watched things, Suicide Squad, for instance, where we're just, like, told that they're a family now and told that they really are invested and care, and that's why they fight as a team. Like, we're told that, but we don't see it. And in this, it's, like, so effortless, and it's just so nice. Like, you fully believe it.
They take the time to show these characters interacting together in ways that make you feel like they care about each other.
Yeah. And showing off their personality and like teasing and her taking care of them and talking crap with Sam and all that good stuff. And she has like nice personality from the beginning, because I think like one of the first things she says is when she's like, you know, when she's with Sam and Sam just had that whole terrible, you know, death with the Halloween costume. He's like, "Oh my God, who are you?" And she's like, "I'm Santa Claus." Like, she's standing
and I'm
there
in dire need of some elves.
Exactly, yeah. She's just standing there with her giant, like, 7-foot scythe, and she's like, "Yep, it's me, Santa." Like, it's just, she's just fun from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. I really love Clara and Sam's dynamic, because, like, Clara and Sam immediately kick it off as like big brother, little sister. And once Clara gets like, she figures out how her veil ripper works, she just sort of rubs it in. She's totally like, haha, I figured this out so quick and you didn't. And like Sam is just so annoyed by it. He's like, why am I stupid? What?
Yeah.
Teach your big dumb brother like how this works.
Yeah.
Should we move on to some other characters? Maybe Heinrich and Mia?
Yeah.
Okay, so we meet these characters, I think it may be issue 3 or so. Heinrich and Mia are a pair of necromancers who appear, but they are actually allies with the Death Vigil. We get a whole backstory with how Heinrich and Bernie know each other, how they have like this very tense relationship.
From the long ago.
Yeah, from the long before. This very tense truce that they have together. Heinrich is Mia's father, and Mia actually has been infused with a primordial. She can turn into one of the primordials, which are like the big demons. So she's super uber powerful, these two are. Despite that, Mia is just this gung-ho, fun little firecracker who's got a really cute relationship with one of the Death Vigil. What's his name? The kid who's got cards.
I put him in my notes. Is it James? Yeah, it's James.
I think it is James. Yeah, he's just a cute dork who loves like MMOs and card games and stuff, and like him and Mia just hang out whenever they're together, and meanwhile their parents are just fuming at each other. It's a very cute, like,
that's exactly what it is. I never thought about it in those terms. That's 100% what's happening. Yeah.
It's parents hate each other, kids love each other. It's so fun and cute.
Mia's really cool. Like, we get the info that like the reason that he bound her soul to one of these is because she was dying. So it's like you have all this like, ooh, you're in between a rock and a hard place kind of thing that gives Heinrich some depth. He's not just like, I'm bad because I'm bad. It's good versus bad.
Yeah, he's one of the few necromancers who actually gets some depth to him. He wasn't doing it for power. He wasn't doing it, you know, out of some obsession with bringing back, you know, a demon lord or whatever. He's just doing it because he loves his daughter and he saw no other way of bringing her back. And
this is completely unrelated because I wrote it down to mention when we talked about is it horny, but Heinrich, along with like I would say the majority of the necromancers, when they're about to like throw down and start casting and using their powers, they take their shirts off because they all have tattoos
and they itch. They itch whenever.
And it's just like a really funny trope that it's just like, oh God, let me just peel this off. Yeah.
Definitely horny. This one's definitely... It's definitely not Sheij's horniest, but it is definitely got some horny in it.
I think Sunstone is maybe his horniest. It's like probably purely just like BDSM. And looks great.
I want to say more on Heinrich and Mia.
Yeah.
But I don't know what else to say. Just the tension that they have with the Death Vigil. It's a great back and forth between, like, they have some legitimate concerns with the Death Vigil, and you can see both sides of them having, you know, good reasons for doing what they did. But on the other hand, it also just kind of feels like this sort of petty squabble at this point. Like, thousands of years ago this happened, and now we're just, you know, just let it go at this point, let it die, because Mia gets along great with everybody else. Heinrich and Bernie are just holding on to this old grudge. just accept that you're friends at this point. Like, get over it.
Which again, it's just, it's so crazy. Like, you can't stress this enough. Like, people go insane just by looking at these things. And she has one within her that she can mostly keep in check, but does come out.
Yeah, she mentions that she has to feed it. And thankfully, where she's a big one, she can feed on the other ones. She doesn't have to, like, feed on people or anything. She can feed on, like, other demons. Yeah.
But it's such a funny balance because it's like that's clearly at play as to why they can't get along. But then also Mia is so cute and there's this like phenomenal evil cosmic demon thing in this like
the beast.
Yeah, the beast inside like this cute little girl.
I guess that's it for Heinrich and Mia. I don't really have anything else to
I mean, not unless we're talking about plot specifically that I can say about them as a whole.
Go ahead. We're spoiling shit.
I think what's cool about Mia is we kind of get like the implication that like she's making the demon part of her like a better person, if we can say that.
Yeah.
Like,
there's sort of an indication that where she's got it so reined in, it's changing the nature.
Exactly.
Of it.
Yeah. Which is like something I've never seen before because how many times have we seen somebody be possessed? Like, I can't even count the number of times. And it's always like, oh, I can't lose control. There's this thing and it's changing me. I was so surprised. I'm like, we never see a situation where it's like, oh shit, the evil that's possessed you are changing it. And thereby making it a little bit better. Like, loved that. Yeah. It was a real great twist.
Yeah. It's not a very common thing. No, it's always playing up the tragedy of, like, the human mind slipping to the monster and never really the monster becoming more human.
I know. I thought that was cool. It was really cool. I thought that was just, like, awesome.
Like I said, we do see a couple other primordials in this, and they refer to Mia when she's in her monster form as the beast, and even they refer to her as like sister, and it never actually seems like Mia slips to the beast. It never seems like, you know, she starts giving in to her evil urges. It always seems like, you know, she's in control. She's got this.
Yeah.
So.
And that's so different, especially because this is literally like, we don't know exact age, but she's like a tween, maybe a teen.
Yeah, but she's also like,
I mean, she's
500 years
true.
old.
I think she's like canonically like 800 years old. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the 1300s.
Yeah, I think so. Like 13th century-ish sounds right. Like, it's been a long time. But I just love how she fits in with their family. I love how, like, her just whole thing is really unique. Like, there's... I don't want to bring up other things, but there's other media that I love, one of which is Sailor Moon, where it's like, there's a young tween girl whose father is like, I did this thing that's going to horribly pollute you to try to, like, save your life. And it's just, this is a completely different way that it's been done. Like, it's not cliche. It's really cool. Like, you think you know what you're going to expect, and you don't get that with Mia, which I really like.
Well, it kind of, I guess this kind of leads into our antagonists. It kind of plays opposite of what the antagonists are doing, because our antagonists, Maria and Wolf.
Wolf with a U.
Yeah, because he's Beowulf.
Yeah.
Maria and Wolf are trying to get the scythe away from Bernie. The whole time, they've got this, like, ancient text that they're translating, and it turns out to have the secrets of, like, summoning primordials that all the necromancers want. And they finally get the translation, give it to the necromancers, and in return, they get the scythe from Bernie. The whole reason they were doing this was to resurrect Maria's daughter and, like, Wolf's adoptive daughter. But whereas with Heinrich and Mia, that is a very wholesome sort of thing. Like, he turned to necromancy to save her life. With Maria and Wolf, it's not wholesome because of the lengths that Maria and Wolf are ready to go to. Like, they're willing to betray all of their former friends. They're willing to kill millions of people by summoning monsters in the middle of a city. Like, they do not care what lengths they have to go to in order to bring back their daughter. In the end, it's all for nothing because her daughter isn't even there anymore.
Yeah.
Like, her spirit's already moved on. And the primordial that she brings in is just, like, using that body in order to, manifest.
Yeah, it's so dark, especially because he's like very like adopted father type to her. Like he and Maria have like some kind of like relationship type thing going on. And it's like very much like, I will stop at nothing to do this. Like Wolf is probably one of the most violent people in the entire comic, honestly. Like he's just brutal.
Yeah, he stabs Sam at like his protege, supposedly. Just without any hesitation. He just doesn't give a shit about his former friends and allies. As soon as you could almost call it like it goes too far too fast. Like Wolf and Maria are totally willing to just Wolf is willing to turn his back on his friends and allies for hundreds of years over like this woman that he met a few years ago. Like he just don't care, just so quick to turn on her. But I can't speak highly enough of the action and art.
I was literally
I'm flipping through it right now.
Yeah, I was thinking I love the scenes where like they're working on like the codex and stuff together. Like it's just so visually cool to look at.
Like I said, it's a blend of like characters and stuff are done in more like traditional 2D line art, whereas the backgrounds are done, I'm pretty sure it's like not computer generated, what am the word I'm looking at? It's digital art.
Yeah.
And you'd think it wouldn't mesh well, but the way that Šejić's line art and stuff for the characters are so expressive and detailed and everything that this sort of photorealistic background art just works great with it too. It gives it a sense of distance that lets you focus in on the characters themselves while not taking away the details of the background and such.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to the monsters, which are really so massive and so detailed.
Yeah, it's like not a single monster in here has... They're all hyper detailed. Each one's like at least the size of a bus, and they're just covered in like eyes and teeth and tentacles and like muscles like beneath skin, like stretching and everything. There's not a single creature in here that's not been meticulously designed. If anything, the critique could be made that it's almost too detailed in places to the point where it's like it's almost sensory overload to look at sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't even mention Hugin. I love Hugin.
Oh, yeah.
There's a raven who somehow became a member of the Vigil.
And he also turns into like an Allosaurus.
Yeah, he turns into like a T-Rex or something.
That was like, I remembered Hugin because I love Hugin, and like they make Raven and Edgar Allan Poe jokes at him like constantly and he hates it. But it was only when I was like refreshing my memory for this pod that I was like, oh shit, yeah, he turns into a fucking dinosaur. And just starts going to town.
The series is a lot of just throwing concepts out. And another thing, I think you mentioned earlier you wanted to talk about a pacing.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah. Part of the pacing is bogged down by lots of exposition. They throw lots of exposition throughout this 8 issues.
Yeah. I don't know if we want to talk about that now or not, but...
Sure.
Yeah, I think like that's one of the, and again, it's not like don't read this because this is so hugely bad, the pacing, but it is really, I think it's much more text heavy than a lot of comics. Like we have this immensely beautiful art, but then we have like huge chunks of text and a lot of like lore and a lot of backstory. And it continues on more than just the first like couple volumes. Because I feel like in most traditional stories, we'd kind of get like the info dumping out of the way and then the plot will pick up. But we're continually kind of slammed with backstory and information a lot at different points. And so I feel like that can kind of, it can kind of throw off your pace, especially because there's so much of it and there's visually a lot of words for you to be looking at.
There's also a lot of panels per page.
Yes, there is. It's like, it's very busy.
Yeah, it's very busy to look at. Like there are some bigger sprawling like full page things, especially during the action. But like a single page, I've just flipped to one here and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 panels on a single page. It's almost like Šejić doesn't want you to miss a single expression that these characters are having during their conversations. Because a lot of the busier ones are when they're just sitting around having conversations.
Yeah.
And that's good because we do get this big, expressive range of, different ways the characters look at each other and frown and smile and all this. But on the other hand, it does make it, so much to look at on a single page with each one, and it can bring the actual story itself to a crawl.
Yeah. And I don't think it's truly, it's not, this huge detriment that takes away from it, but, when I was refreshing my own memory on it and seeing what other people have said, there were people, and I'm like, okay, I can see where you're coming from, where they were saying the people who have complaints about this, again, very few of them are about the art. It's just that for some of them, the storytelling didn't work for them because there is a lot of constant dialogue and a lot of visuals. Yeah. So when there's a lot of both of those, like we said, it makes it kind of busy. And then some people have pointed out a lot of it where it's really text heavy is just characters literally sitting down and talking and listening at each other. So it almost seems a little lectury. Yeah. And so that can just kind of take away when you have such dramatic visuals that we don't get a lot of just boom, just that, take it in, soak it up.
Yeah, if you're not invested in the character dynamics, you will be upset with this comic because it is very, very driven on the interactions between these characters, the discussions they have. It's built on this sort of found family charm. And if that just doesn't hook you, then you're just not going to like this comic because even though it's got great art, great action, it is super heavily invested into the dialogue between these characters.
Mm-hmm. I think this is also, especially when it comes to Bernadette, it gets compared a lot to the Sandman comics that Neil Gaiman has.
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, and I've read some of Sandman and I enjoyed it, but it didn't make as big an impact on me as I would say Death Vigil did. So it's really...
It's one that It's one I've overlooked. I need to get to Sandman.
I think, there's a lot, Neil Gaiman usually has something really good to offer, but I think with Death Vigil... It's the combo of stunning visuals and then awesome team building family dynamics and cuteness that really cinches it for me. Yeah, it's fun. So I can overlook a lot of these things that, again, I don't really see as a big deal, but people who are oh man, if you want this, just go read Sandman, will say.
From what I know of Sandman, it's a very different sort of vibe, though.
Yeah. So it absolutely is. But there is a goth girl who is Death, so everybody's just same thing. Yeah. Even though they're very
aesthetic
different
similarities rather than
exactly.
I love some of the weird side character vigils that we get, and we only get them briefly, but they just, we get a polar bear as a death vigil at one point.
Yeah.
There's a guy and a girl who work together. One of them has goggles that can see through walls, and the other has a gun that can shoot through walls. There's just a bunch of weird combinations of veil rippers and how it all works. It you can tell there's a lot of imagination, and that Šejić really wanted to go all out crazy absurd with how the magic in this world works. Mm-hmm. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's unapologetically fun. It spends a little too much time trying to explain how everything works and what all the backstory is for everything.
Yes.
It could have just accepted that, this is a big, wacky horror fantasy comedy action series, and we're just in it. We're just in it, and we're just going to accept how crazy things get. And I think people would have latched onto it, even if we had just, cut out some of the whole, extensive backstories of all these characters and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a specific kind of person who's gonna get into the dynamic of the group and have fun with it. I don't remember if they mentioned this specifically in the comics or not, but I did see it because I went to the creator's Twitter. He has so much stuff on Twitter that he's always putting out. He's put out even more, another sneak peek this month, of part of volume 2. Which I'm just okay, so does that mean it's happening? He puts out, here's 3D models I designed for some of my other stuff. He also puts out little DeviantArt drawings, and there's this one where it's Clara and Sam, and she's so excited, and she's like, oh my gosh, she brought me back to life. I'm alive again. Look at my hair. It's black. And Sam's like, yeah, give it a few seconds. And her hair immediately turns white again. And he's like, welcome to the Die After You Die Club. Your hair's always gonna be white. I don't know, there's just a lot of cuteness, and they call themselves names Like, James calls himself the Card Master, and
James has some cute stuff with, like, his whole nerd everything, because, like, in the big final battle, Sam summons all of his Vikings, and then James is, like, explaining a battle plan to them, and he's like, Viking guys, you're DPS, and the Vikings are like, DPS? He's like, it's damage per second. You know, kill as many as you can as fast as you can. And the Vikings are just battle crying like, DPS! Yeah. And they charge into the monster.
Yeah, because he's like basically got like a Magic the Gathering kind of like card deck, and the Vikings are like, yes, DPS! Because the Vikings take things really literally. Like, there was a whole part with Sam where he was talking about like bloodshed, I think. And they were like, Sam, this isn't enough blood for all of us to like bathe in this blood. And he's like, I don't mean it like literally. Like,
yeah, he's like, there's enough bloodbath for everyone. He's like, this isn't even enough bloodbath for my armpits.
Yeah, I remember that. It's just so cute. So, yeah, James is really, really fun. And again, like, the strength of this is just like the interactions they have together. So I'm more forgiving of the fact that we have to have a lot of them sitting around and talking sometimes. Or have...
Bernie's final form is really cool, too.
Oh, yeah.
Like, she trades out the cloak for a pair of big black angel wings. Her hair gets all wild and, like, hangs around her hair and, like, it hangs around her head and it's shining white. She gets, like, a really skeletal, creepy face. Like, she's badass looking.
Yeah, she does really look cool.
I don't know much else to actually say about this one, to be honest.
Is she barefoot in her final form? Yeah, it looks like she is.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, she is.
That's pretty neat. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's... The last thing I really think we could talk about, if we were going to talk about it, is just about the enemy, about specific ones. I mean, the Abyss being the big one. That's probably maybe the last thing that we could really say. I love the design of the Abyss. Like, there's all this buildup as to, like, what it's going to look like. And then you see it, and it's like this weird... How do I even explain it? It's just like this big mouth that has a dude's weird-ass corpse body in it.
We see it first in this big, like, smoky room. It lives in, like, this place called the Necropolis, and there's just this huge chamber where, like, there's just smoke and, like, a platform leading out over the haze. And then you just see these tentacles and stuff, like, come out, and they're just building-sized. And, like, this huge, gaping, toothy mouth reaches up, like, comes out in front of this character that's talking to it.
Yeah.
And when it opens its mouth, there's, like, a guy in there. Like, this guy with Voldemort-looking kind of with no nose.
White eyes.
Glowing eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got no lower body. It's just his upper half, and then it, like, spins out into intestines and shit that, like, merges with the mouth's tongue. It's so gross.
Yeah, it's like this guy is part of the tongue. It's so messed up.
Yeah, the human necromancer has completely merged with this gigantic monster.
Oh, it's so cool.
It's so grotesque looking, and it's a great design.
Yeah, it really is. I don't know. This isn't really, again, it's like not the kind of thing I would normally be interested in. Like, I love horror. I love fantasy. I don't know. There's just something about, it's different than what you expect. It's not traditional necromancy. There's a freaking, as it says on the back, a mystical raven that turns into a T-Rex shapeshifter. Like, it's just very different from what I was expecting.
It's unapologetically what it is.
Yeah.
It wants to be this big, fun action series with a horror aesthetic and a comedy vibe. And even though it kind of fumbles some of those things at times, it never strays from the vibe it's going for.
Yeah. I think sometimes it can be a little heavy-handed with, like, the amount of things it's trying to do, but it's still well worth it.
It's sincere.
Yeah. It's sincere, and it's, like, fun and badass, but also, like, ridiculous and and funny and interesting. Like, you want to keep reading it. And, like, again, it's so rare, I feel like, that we see, like, the facial expressions and body language and, like, range of movement and action and stuff to this level in a comic.
Yeah, I really do think... I like, the pacing... I understand people's issues with the pacing, but I can't really see this working without the sort of pacing it has, because it takes a lot of time in conversations to show every emotion that the characters are going through.
Yeah.
Like, they'll go from, like, kind of worried to more worried to sort of moving back into feeling more comfortable to being happy.
Yeah.
And like all of this can happen on a single page.
Yeah, it's really showing us their emotional environment, not just like the surface level.
Yeah, even though it can make the page itself cluttered, there's so much happening, and it's incredible how much range these characters can go through in such a short period of time, in like a single page.
Yeah, it's very top notch.
I guess that's kind of it, though. I don't know if I have any other notes on it.
Yeah, I mean, unless we were going to do like review or something, it's basically just big story, good against evil, cool characters, beautiful art.
I'll be honest, I skipped review. I got the general... excuse me. Yeah. I got the general review of 4.4 out of 5 on Goodreads. So people really tend to like this. But I skipped a review because, like, every time I do review and you're on, you fucking crush reviews. So if you've got any good review, throw them at me.
Okay, I really like review just because I like to see, only after I've engaged in material myself, like, I like to see... you know, how other people interpreted it, whether it's something I agree with or not. So I think that was really fun. Again, it's kind of hard to find ones that were not great, but I definitely have some that I can talk about. All right, so one that I liked from Venus Maneater, 4 out of 5 stars. Couldn't say I was thrilled when I scrolled through the first pages. Death is one of the protagonists and very cute as well. You know, wasn't really feeling it, but that all went out the window once a boat full of ghoul pirates got dragged from the pits of hell. He isn't doing a Neil Gaiman ripoff at all. It's an entirely new universe in its own way, and it really, really works. The review talks about, it's a pretty long one, but talks about like how it uses familiar tropes, like, you know, this cute little innocent thing is actually a giant killer monster and stuff like that. And they said, one of the things about this review that I really liked is they said, he draws beautiful faces and expressions. All the emotions feel very real. There is joy in death. Let's face it, most of the characters in this book have a pretty shitty job and they all know it. They seek their solace in their somewhat dysfunctional family that Betts creates for them, and it's really heartwarming to see. He caters to us nerds, and I love to see it. I really do. So that one was pretty fun. There's quite a lot of reviews of people being very upset that Volume 2 doesn't exist. Which again is really kind of beyond his ability unless he's going to just start creating it for absolutely no money and somehow be publishing this himself like on DeviantArt. Yeah, so,
the amount of work that has gone into this comic is insane. Like, him being the writer and artist for this is absurd because there's so much dialogue, so much backstory, all of this, plus the art is so highly hyper detailed. Like, it must have taken forever to put all this together.
It's really truly like even the things that he puts out as teasers, again, you can tell it just took so much time. Like his little joke comics, because he'll put together little joke comics with like Sam and Clara or Bernie. It's like, this was no small undertaking. This isn't just something you doodled really quick while you were watching TV. Like, this took a lot of time and effort and dedication.
Absolutely. It was definitely a labor of love.
There was one review that made me laugh, where Teresa said that she gave it 2 out of 5 stars, and she said that she loves his work, his art, his storytelling, that it was lacking something for her, and that she felt that Clara adapted to the family way too quickly after just being murdered by her boyfriend, that she just immediately clings onto this family. And I just had to laugh because, again, I think that's one of the strengths of the story, and you really see with Clara's character, like, that's her personality.
Yeah, I think that might be an instance where, like I said earlier, there are things in this story that don't work so well on paper, and I can see people kind of get hung up on it, because it is a quick turnaround. Clara does really quickly, join in with the family, but it's all done in a very charming, fun way that it's like, okay, we're just in it now. Like, if you can just roll with it, then you can really enjoy like the sort of vibe that this story is going for. But if it is too much of like a heel turn for you, then yeah, I get it. Especially because we do get her mentioning, like, she had a bad family life.
Mm-hmm.
I can see people being like, how is she so quick to turn around with this if she did have a bad family life? And why are we not seeing what that family life was like?
Right.
Before?
Mm-hmm. It's funny because sometimes I read reviews and it's really interesting. And that's why I like doing it, because some things will have more of an impact for people than others. And sometimes I think that those can be petty. I was looking at a review for a restaurant that I really love that I was eating at, and somebody had left just the most glowing review, and they were like, the food here is the best. Like, absolutely love how they have all these vegan and vegetarian options. They have so many flavors. Like, it has just like such a richness of texture. The inside of the restaurant is a little cold. 2 out of 5 stars. Like, and I'm just like, oh, like that really, that cracked me up in person, because I'm like, that's what some of these reviews feel like. Like, her one criticism in this review is that she felt like Clara adopted this family too quickly. And then other than that, she literally just like loves the storytelling, the art, the work overall, but that's enough to be 2 out of 5. I mean,
like the numbers on what's always been funniest to me about review is looking how different the numbers are from the actual words they say.
Yes, it's very, very funny. And one of the top reviews, because it has 1 like, and that really probably speaks more to the fact that there's not a ton of them. I mean, there are a lot of reviews, but not compared to something huge, like Lord of the Rings or something.
This comic's a sleeper hit.
Yeah. One of the top reviews with 1 whole like is by yours truly, Erika, left on April 5th of 2020. And I said, so good. Bernadette and Sam. Clara is amazing. I read all of it in less than 24 hours. This series does a great job of introducing you to the story and keeping you invested. The art, of course, is gorgeous. So, little self-promotion there, being one of those top reviews with 1 whole like. But yeah, it just, I really like scoured the internet because I wanted to see what people could criticize it for, and there's very little. One person said, I'm a slut for anything he does, which I thought was great, especially since he does have some more risque stuff. But
he has a great series of Wonder Woman X Lara Croft,
really,
from Tomb Raider.
Oh, that's
it's
cool.
not like it's not an actual series,
right?
It's just like little individual panels of them interacting together
that
he's drawn. And it's really cute.
That's neat.
Yeah, he's got a lot of great fan art stuff he's done.
And he did Harleen, which is pretty mainstream, and he's also done some stuff for Aquaman, I believe. At least the art, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he's a lot better known for his art, I think, than being an actual writer. This one was specifically like his project, like everything he basically took over. I think there was an editor and some people, I think, who helped with some of the line art or something, or coloring or something. But for the most part, this is his baby.
Yep. Yeah, it says that a whole new era of Aquaman begins as master storyteller Sage from Sunstone and Death Vigil joins in. So yeah, I'm assuming, again, like we said, it's probably really art-based, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah. You got any recommendations?
Oof, okay, that's a good question. The only one, I should have prepared for that, but I didn't even think about it. The only other one, which we've again mentioned multiple times in this, and then also mentioned in our Harley, is everybody needs to check out Harleen. Like, if you haven't checked out Harleen, you really have to, because it's like some of the things that we criticize, again, criticize is too strong a word, some of the things that we critique Death Vigil about, about not having enough time to absorb the visuals, Harleen gives you that. There are some really, truly, like, full-page amazing shots of Harley Quinn, and as somebody who's spent so much time reading about Harley Quinn, watching Harley Quinn, like, it's beautiful to look at. The second I read it, I went out and bought it, and then bought a copy. Was telling Shadow she needed one immediately. Like, it's, can't recommend it enough. Like, the way that Gotham looks, it's not even just the characters. Like, it's awesome.
I'm going to recommend, because Sheiji's wife, Linda, is actually also a comic artist and writer.
That's so cool.
She has a webcomic that did get, like, a physical release, I think actually also with Image Comics, called Punderworld. That is based on the Greek myth of Hades and Persephone, one of my favorite Greek myths.
Wait, that's her?
And Yeah, Punderworld is Linda Šejić.
I don't think I even knew the artist's name. That is so cool.
Yeah, you can see that they have a lot of similarities in their style, because she also she's a little less detail oriented than he is. Like, she's still very detail oriented, but she definitely has that same fixation on showing character facial expressiveness and everything, because like there's a lot of changes and shifts in the way that their facial expressions work. But yeah, Punderworld is a lot of fun. It's still ongoing. I think it's on hiatus right now, but it's a really fun take on the Hades and Persephone myth. Go check it out. It's free on Webtoon, I think, but you can get physical copies of it if you want.
Ah, that's so great. Did not know that was his wife, so that's extra exciting. Because I checked that out online after we talked about it, and it really is great. I do actually have one other recommendation, because I do remember now that I was thinking about it while rereading Death Vigil. Basketful of Heads by Joe Hill is a graphic novel that is also got axes, horror, and comedy. It's about a girl who's visiting her boyfriend, and some criminals have escaped, and her boyfriend's been abducted, and his family has this Viking axe. The family of the house that she's in has a Viking axe. He collects ancient artifacts, and this Viking axe is actually magical, and she's able to cut off people's heads, yet they stay alive once their heads are severed. And it's really gory. It's really funny. It really, again, kind of like sucks you in. It is not beautiful, but you definitely spend a lot of time looking at the images. And Joe Hill is Stephen King's son, so he knows how to deliver horror. It's a fun one.
All right. Well, let's rate the damn thing and be done with it.
Okay.
What rating would you give Death Vigil?
Ooh, I would give it 4 out of 5 scythes.
Okay. I'm going to give it 12 out of 16 Veil Rippers needed to summon a dead child that's actually a primordial in disguise. All right. I think that's going to do it for us. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with your friends, drop a like or a rating, and be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Tongue and Geek. That is at Tongue and Geek, all one word. I know we've got a lot of people listening on YouTube right now, and that's great, but if you want to listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, we're on all those as well, so whatever's most convenient for you. But however you listen, thank you for joining us here at Tongue and Geek, and remember, don't throw your baby in the trash.